And then took a few bites out of this one today.
You're kidding.
The Country Hour on ABC Local Radio.
You're listening to Tim Bennett
on ABC Local Radio.
Thanks for joining us once again on the program. Tim Bennett is my name, and yesterday, we found out something interesting. Saturday is not just another Saturday, and Sunday is not quite as special, at least according to the eyes of the South Australian Unions and Business SA. The Union for Retail, Fast Food, Hair and Warehouse Workers, the SDA, has struck an enterprise agreement with Business SA after a 9-month negotiation period, which will see Saturday penalty rates scrapped in this state and Sunday penalty rates halved. And we've got a couple of people on the line to discuss this. We've got Senator Bob Day. He's a Family First Senator for South Australia. Bob, welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning.
And we've also got Joe Szakacs. He's the Secretary of SA Unions. Joe, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Now, I'll give both of you a chance to talk, but I want to start with you, Senator. Why do you believe this is the right direction for the state?
Well, look, these arrangements are fine for those who want them, and removing barriers to getting a job and acknowledging that there have been obstacles to employment in South Australia. We've got the highest unemployment rate in the country, and I think there's a basic fundamental acknowledgement that price does matter. The more expensive something is, the less people are willing to buy it, and that's no more true than hiring someone. But there is a world outside of the Adelaide CBD, so there is something very city-centric about this proposal. So my point is, spare a thought for those who work outside Adelaide and want to come to arrangements that don't suit this particular agreement.
So in terms of what you believe, because I understand that you are, generally speaking, a supporter of lower penalty rates and a lower minimum wage in many cases. Do you believe that this agreement will suit the regions?
I'm not. It's not true to say that I want lower minimum wages. What I want is for people to make their own arrangements if that's what they want to do. And particularly in country areas, you've got lots of young people who are living at home, rent-free, driving dad's ute or mum's car. They don't have a high cost of living, so why should they be forced to comply with 3,000 pages of workplace regulations if they don't want to? They should be allowed to come to their own arrangements if it suits them and their families. I
have Joe Szakacs now. You're from SA Unions. Now, Joe, at the end of the day, your members don't, there's not much to do with your members if they don't have jobs. Is this a win for business across the state?
Well, look, we've seen a very deliberate campaign from unions for quite a long, from employers, I should say, for a very long time now to reduce penalty rates right across Australia in more than just retail industries. It was only last week that we saw the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry make their submissions to the Productivity Commission, recommending that all penalty rates be scrapped from awards. Now, that's not just retail workers. We're talking now about anybody who works on a 24/7 roster. We're talking nurses, firefighters, police officers, cleaners, aged care workers, just to name a few. We think that this discussion that simply if you pay someone less, there will be more jobs, is empty rhetoric. There is no evidence. There is no suggestion from any independent study that is simply the case. And I'd also like to make a reference to the regions. And look, one thing that probably Senator Day and I do agree on is that the regions are doing it really tough. And the economy in South Australia is doing it tough, and that it is very difficult at the moment to find jobs. Now, rather than talking about how we can pay people less, we should be talking about how we can do something about helping people into work. And it's our vision, it's the union's vision. The way you do that is by skilling your young people, by spending more money on skills and training, by not attempting to make higher education less affordable, by not attempting to take billions of dollars out of public schools through Gonski funding.
Joe, do you feel that maybe there's a place for businesses to do that in the private sector now that hopefully they're going to be saving a little more money on wages?
Look, absolutely. And we've seen huge success in the idea that when unions and employers negotiate enterprise agreements, there are beneficial outcomes for all. We've always been an advocate for enterprise bargaining. That is, when a group of employees with their union sit down and work out middle ground with their employers. We've seen that across many industries, and frankly, in large industry right across Australia, that is the norm. That is the norm. And we would, in all cases, suggest that that is the best outcome for all, for people to sit down and try and work out a middle ground. But when it comes to attacking the base rates, and that is minimum wage and weekend shift loadings through scrapping them from the award system, we say that is a one step far too far.
And Joe, I want to come back to that point that you made just then about the minimum wage, as well as just the sort of the broader situation of discussing and enterprise bargaining. But first, Senator Day, the one point that Joe made there was that this is... they're worried that this is going to be rolled out to other sectors, shift workers, miners, and crucially hospital staff and emergency workers. Will this potentially lead to the punishment of some of the most important people in our workforce?
Look, I'm not at all interested in what employers want at all.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with Joe on a number of points there. What I'm saying is that if a person's unemployed, getting $5 or $6 an hour, and they want to knock on the door of a restaurant or a cafe that's closed on weekends because it's too expensive to open, and said, look, I'm getting $5, $6 an hour on the dole. Can I work for you for $20 an hour? Now, most people think, well, what's wrong with that? Well, there's a lot wrong with that. It's against the law, for a start, because there are all sorts of workplace regulations and penalty rates and a whole lot of other things. I don't think it should be up to employer organisations like Business SA or unions at all to tell someone you are not allowed to work. And if a young person, in particular, like I said, in a country town that doesn't have a high cost of living, that wants to come to their own arrangement for their own reasons, it should not be illegal for them to do that. And at present, it is. And the problem we have in Australia is that politicians and union leaders and business leaders treat this whole workplace situation as if it's some kind of a game with employers or bosses on one team and the employees or the workers on another, and this game is sort of overseen by a so-called independent umpire. So it's like they think, oh yeah, you've got employers and bosses on one side, you've got workers on the other, and you've got an umpire. That's not how the game is played at all.
Can you imagine that potentially it will be? I mean, we're talking about a voluntary system here. In a lot of small businesses, there will be workers who won't be able to argue that point against, with their bosses. I mean, potentially there could be quite an adversarial system.
It's not voluntary at all. If you're a young person living in a country town and you say, look, I'm living at home, and they go around to a local mechanic and say, look, you teach me how to fix diesel motors. Look, I'm getting $240 a week on the dole or something. If you gave me the equivalent of that, teach me how to be a diesel mechanic, and I'll be on $1,000 a week or $2,000 a week for the rest of my life. That is so illegal against the law, and I'm saying it shouldn't be. It's not voluntary at all. It's extremely regulated, and no one is allowed to do their own thing, and it doesn't matter whether you're over 50 or under 25, or you're a disabled person, or you're an Aboriginal person. You are excluded from coming to an arrangement that suits you. You have to comply with what Business SA and the union sector says that you will, what arrangement you have, and I think that's wrong.
Joe Szakacs, it's a point that is backed up by, look, a lot of people. Bob Day just recently was spoken to about by Robert Gottebson. I'm sorry about that. He's the associate editor at Business Spectator. He said Bob Day is one of the few MPs to actively try and reduce unemployment, but it's so politically incorrect that it's impossible to get through. Does Bob have a point that there is too much regulation, that the unions are making it too difficult for employers and employees?
Well, again, minimum wage is something that is completely out of the hands of trade unions or Business SA. The minimum wage is set annually by the Fair Work Commission. That's been something that's been around for generations. And I say generations, and I'm talking decades. The minimum wage is the one thing in Australia which does define us from other economies such as America. Now, Senator Day has spoken about this idea that simply if you're on if you're a young kid who's earning the dole and you want to become a diesel mechanic, well, that's what trades and apprenticeships are for. That's what trades and apprenticeships are for. We're not going to support in any way the Americanisation of our workforce, where right now in America we see a whole generation of people working more than 40 hours a week, yet still not being able to afford to live. The average working week in America now has gone up to 48 hours a week, yet their minimum wage is in cases either completely deregulated or half of that of Australia. We will not support and we will fight against any moves to make people work 40 hours a week or more and still be below the poverty line. And that is what Senator Day is advocating for. It is just empty rhetoric to suggest that someone can walk into a small business and ask to be paid less than minimum wage and have a choice about it. If it is simply the case that we can continue to talk about more jobs and more opportunities for young people, then it is a race to the bottom to suggest that the only way to deal with that is to pay them less. That is not what Australia expects from our parliamentarians.
We're joined by Joe Szakacs from SA Unions. He's the Secretary of SA Unions, as well as Senator Bob Day, a South Australian senator, regarding the new development by the SDA, which is essentially the retailers' union, and the Business SA to agree to scrap Saturday penalty rates and reduce Sunday penalty rates. Bob, Joe was talking about the minimum wage and whether we want to see it in Australia. We have, at the moment, a productivity commission that's looking into minimum wage and penalty rates. Do you think, what do you expect from their findings will happen?
Well, look, first and foremost, Joe is totally misrepresenting what I'm saying, and the usual misrepresentation is scaremongering, and they throw out the old, we don't want the Americanisation of Australia. This is not America. There is no comparison whatsoever. But, you talk about walking in and saying they want to be paid below the minimum wage. You can walk into lots and lots of places and work for nothing. I know people working 30 and 40 hours a week in op shops and for Meals on Wheels and for the RSPCA and for nursing homes and gardening, working for nothing. You are allowed to work. You can be a worker and be paid zero. And no one at all has a problem with that. Or, in Joe's world, you can be paid $640 a week, which is the minimum wage. But woe betide you if you even dare suggest that you want to work for any figure between $0 and $640. So if you're retired, say you're over 50, say you're 65, you're as fit as a fiddle, you've been around Australia 3 times, you've been on 4 cruises, and you think, look, I'm sick of this hanging around home, I want to go and get a job, I don't have a mortgage. You can work for nothing, or you can work for $600, but you're not allowed to say, look, give me a job for $300 or $400 a week and I'll be fine. It is against the law. It's then touted as being Americanisation, which is not that at all. It's just common sense.
Joe, are you open to discussing these changes or these ideas, even if it is a halfway point, or are you firmly going to always oppose them?
I think I need to comment on this notion that people are working 40 hours a week as volunteers, and somehow that can be even contemplated in the same discussion as lowering the minimum wage or allowing people to contract out of the minimum wage.
I'm not suggesting you lower the minimum wage.
No, Senator, you're suggesting that people are working 40 hours a week now for free. There is a very big difference between someone choosing to volunteer for a community organisation and someone needing $640 a week to pay their mortgage.
They're working alongside those people.
Senator, that is completely false. It is completely false.
Go to any op shop. You go to any op shop, you'll see people working alongside. Some are working for nothing, some are working for $640. Why can't you work for halfway if you want to?
Senator, the idea that people such as myself who volunteer in various community organisations across this country, we've got the highest volunteering rate across the Western world, to suggest that somehow that should be used as an argument to allow people to work for less than the federal...
Well, why won't you let them if they want to?
There is a very big difference here between someone choosing to volunteer their time as a community organisation.
But answer the question. You can work for nothing, but you're not allowed to work for $350 if you want to.
Senator, the people that are working in these volunteering jobs don't have the same obligations on them as an employee does. They don't have sick leave. They don't have paid annual leave. They don't have a contract of employment. They can walk in the door one day and never return the next.
But I'm suggesting to increase there. They say, look, I'm happy to work for nothing, but my circumstances have changed. Can you now pay me $300? And if the employer says yes, what's wrong with that?
So you're suggesting now that the many community organisations across Australia which are funded by free volunteering of volunteers should now be forced to pay.
Not forced, but if people want to do it, they want to deal you and Business SA out of the deal. They're not interested in Business SA representing them or you. They want to come to arrangement. At the moment, the arrangement is that they're working for nothing.
Senator, there are no arrangements in Red Cross. There are no arrangements in Meals on Wheels. There are no arrangements in St Vincent de Paul's. These are organisations which are funded by...
But if they get paid, if they are to be paid, suddenly they have to comply with 3,000 pages of regulation. I'm saying, why can't you let them do their own thing? Leave them alone.
Mr. Szakacs and Senator Day, I might have to wrap this up.
Sorry,
here.
yeah, okay.
No, it's good to hear. It's good to hear a robust discussion. Look, and I might just ask this very quickly of both of you. And Joe, I'll just start with you. If the Productivity Commission does come back and say something that is potentially against the vein of what the South Australian unions would generally support in terms of the lowering of the minimum wage or penalty rates, will you come to the table and discuss with Business SA and other business groups?
Look, we're continuing to meet and discuss these on an ongoing basis. However, when it comes to essentially the battle lines around the fact that our workers in our community who work 24-hour rosters, such as the people that you mentioned before in emergency services, in cleaning, in retail, in the whole gamut of our economy, battle lines are drawn. There are parts of our community which would suggest that those people should be paid up to 40% less overnight. We will proudly stand up for the 24/7 economy. We'll proudly stand up for penalty rates. We would expect the Productivity Commission to make their recommendations in this term of government, and then really it's up to the federal government and the crossbench senators such as Senator Day to show their hands, show their cards, either support or oppose the PC inquiry.
And Senator Bob Day, same situation. If this does come out before the next term, are you confident that it'll go to an election? And again, are you confident that you'll be able to have a robust discussion at the time with the unions and with the business groups?
Yes, but there's no need for battle lines and fighting. I'm just suggesting that let people do their own thing for their own circumstances if they want to, particularly in country areas. Just leave them alone and stop talking about battle lines and fighting. They don't want you to fight for them, Joe. Let them sort things out for themselves if that's what they both want to do.
No doubt it'll be an issue that will follow as time goes on. We may even go to an election with it. Joe, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
And Bob Day, Senator for South Australia, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure, anytime.
It's Joe Szakacs and Senator Bob Day speaking to us. Senator Bob Day is a senator with Family First, and Joe Szakacs is the Secretary of SA Unions, talking about what is likely to be a situation where retail workers potentially will at least have the choice to argue with or discuss with their employer around the provision of penalty rates in this state.